Am I late for my own show? Am I late for my own birthday party? What am I doing? Holy cow. Welcome, everybody, to the live show. This is great. This is great. Let's bring the chat in here, guys. Come on in. Here we are. How many of you guys are waiting in the room? Holy cow, so many of you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming to hang out on it's a very special day indeed. Very, very special. Welcome to your stream, Clyde. Thank you. Oh, it's great. Jelly Dog member for 26 months. Honk honk, my man. Yes, honk honk indeed. Honk honk indeed. Glad to see everybody in here. Drew Johns with a happy birthday, Clyde. Thank you very much. Yeah. The ripe old age of 42 this year. Unbelievable. I know I got one of those baby faces. Happy birthday from Sudbury, Ontario. Yeah, everybody let me know where you're at. I haven't done that in a while. Throw that in the chat where you guys are from, where you're viewing from. It's always good to see that. I'm looking forward to today's show. Got a couple of great special guests coming in later in the evening. We're gonna talk about some stories first and foremost, but then we're gonna get into talking things with we're talking emigration with Harrison Faulkner, and then we're also gonna be talking with Lauren Southern. Looking forward to it. Hopefully, there's not a lot of hiccups. You know, you guys know now I'm way out in the woods for a temporary situation here. But we'll see. We'll see. Make sure that nothing's conking out in the middle of the live stream. Holy cow! Yeah, a lot of people from different places. Ottawa Valley, Gatineau, Quebec, 100 Mile House, awesome. Close by where I'm at. Ontario, Mississauga. Wow. Chatham, Ontario. Wow. I've spent a lot of time out in Chatham when I was in my younger days. Holy cow. Yeah, Chatham's a great place. Clyde, Fort St. John's, BC. Happy birthday. Thank you so much. Northern Nana. Awesome. Thank you so much. Happy birthday from Calgary Stampede. How's the Calgary Stampede going this year? You know, if I was there, I would probably buy tickets for those houses. Those houses, they give away a house like every year at the local Stampede. You got to be there to purchase the ticket. You got to be there. I think you can buy it online, but you got to prove that you're there. You're like, they follow all the regulations of the lottery commission. So yeah, you got to make sure you're eligible, and then you can sign up. It'd be great to win a house, especially in this day and age. It's like, that's a lot of money for a house. That's an ultimate prize. Wow, thank you for all the happy birthdays. Really appreciate that. That's awesome. No blackface. It's incredible. Okay, so you have to get into that because that's kind of one of the things of the show today we're going to talk about. Why don't we dabble into that story? Now, this is in the news. This is obviously Trudeau no longer going to Calgary Stampede as some Liberal MPs call for his resignation, or at least a meeting. That's, of course, the caucus that Trudeau doesn't want to go anywhere near. It's probably the first caucus that Trudeau's avoided entirely. There's many jokes to be had on that one. Of course, you saw my title the other morning that, Justin Trudeau won't even touch his own caucus. It's a thing. So watch out. Justin Trudeau not going to the Calgary Stampede, however, because reasons, right? I mean, it's an incredible opportunity, even if you're dead last, to at least raise funds. But no, he's given it up. And Amazing Zoltan was so kind to post this video on Twitter. Calgarians respond to news that Justin Trudeau will not be coming to the Calgary Stampede. What did Calgarians have to say?
That's probably a good idea.
I'm not going to miss Trudeau if he doesn't come to Calgary. No, he can stay where he is.
Not surprised with the current political conditions.
It's probably okay. I don't know if anyone wants to see him here anyway.
Nobody wants to see him anyway.
I'm not going to miss Trudeau.
Oh, that's too good. Yeah, he won't be missed. He won't be missed in Calgary. I know last time I was there, I went to the Stampede. It was my first time ever last year. I went and Trudeau's entourage held up public transport, and people had to sit on the train, a hot train, while his entourage stopped the transport from going by. A lot of people not too thrilled about that. Just wait in traffic like the rest of us. You can't just wait in traffic with the rest of us. Unbelievable. But that's that's where we're at. That's where we're at. Incidentally, it was funny. I was talking to someone who's running for office, and he was telling me about the way things have been throughout Canadian history. I mean, Marty even was talking about this last video we were mentioning. Even Jean Chrétien back in the day, he would just be able to walk to Parliament every morning, and he'd have a cop like a block away behind him, some sort of security. But that was it. Then people would walk up to him, say, "Hey, good morning, Mr. Prime Minister," and it was all good. It was fine. It was no problem. Of course, this Prime Minister, he can't go anywhere without a giant group of police presence with him at all times. It's just, it's par for the course at this point. But this guy I was talking to, he's talking about Pierre Poilievre and how a lot of MPs, when they're traveling with Pierre Poilievre, they find it weird because he travels coach. Like, he'll travel economy class, like with all of us plebeians, and he's over there, and a lot of the MPs will end up in business class for those flights. But I guess that's a way to get your message out. If you're running for prime minister, fly economy. Get that out there. Hi, Clyde. How are you? Nice to see you every Friday. I feel like we're friends. LOL. Steve, thank you so much. I feel like we are friends. I really appreciate that. That's great. It's great. I try to keep these streams up all the time. Unfortunately, I didn't have a video this morning, so apologies for that. I didn't put a video up this morning, and I got to tell you, it was circumstance, but it was my fault. We had a scheduled power outage Thursday afternoon, and I forgot to shut down my computer. So when I got back, it corrupted a bunch of the audio drivers, and I had to spend this morning fixing all those audio drivers instead of making a video. So that was unfortunate, and that's why there was no video this morning. But I made sure that it was all ready to go so that this stream would go off without a hitch, especially with the guests. When you have guests line up, that's the worst to have a situation where it doesn't run smoothly. Happy birthday, Clyde, says Trish Peru with a $2 super chat. Thanks for sharing your day. Well, thank you for coming and enjoying the day with me. At least the evening, at least for a couple of hours. I really appreciate it. Thank you. What's weird is them thinking they're somehow entitled to luxury at our expense. That's exactly it. I don't agree with that. Like, you get a free ticket, you might as well. If it's at our expense, it shouldn't be anything more than necessary. But I guess the prime minister would fly in the prime minister's jet. That's what they do. What is the name of the prime? Like, I know there's Air Force One in the United States. Do we have a name for our prime minister's jet? That's how little I've ever cared. But let me know. Let me know in the comments here. I'm curious. Sorry, getting weird DMs all the time. But yeah, people saying happy birthday in my DMs. Happy birthday. Thank you. I really appreciate it, everybody. Yeah, is there an answer for that? The crime minister. Is there an answer for what the airplane is called? Can Force One? Is it really called that? Cash Grab One. Castro One. I like that. That's hilarious. On the scren. There we go. What else we got here? There's never been a call sign for the PM's plane. Oh, okay. I like that though. The Cash Grab One. Air Force Deuce. Douche. Yeah, the Air Force douche. So that's that. Anyway, let's move on. I wanted to talk about some other things. I like this. This popped up in my feed, and I just thought it was hilarious. It's kind of one of those awesome ironicies, ironic things that happen. just in daily discourse of things occurring, happening. This is Anti-Capitalist Cafe shuts down due to lack of capital. Excuse me. Excuse me. This is great. This is great. Anti-Capitalist Cafe shuts down due to lack of capital. The Anarchist, which is strangely named the Anarchist because there are so many anarchists that are very, very pro-market. Have I lost my connection? On the screen. Whoa, did my computer freeze? Whoa, did my whole everything kind of froze there for a second? Are we good? Are we good? Hopefully everything's fine here. Anyway, I wanted to get into this. Did it freeze for you guys, or did it just freeze for me? Everything froze up for a second there. We'll try to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Please pray for Joe. Lol, not. I don't know what that is. Anyway. Okay, so the Anti-Capitalist Cafe shuts down due to lack of capital. The Anarchist, which is it's ironically named because, I mean, there are so many anarchists out there that are pro-market. I mean, it's such a weird thing. There's like anarcho-capitalist, and then there's anarcho-syndicalist, and you go down that rabbit hole, and it's just a world of pain and suffering. It's awful. But I do know one anarchist from South America who's very much a fan of the market economy. That's this guy. His name's Javier Milei. Incidentally, they've been making little statues, figurines of him with that chainsaw. I want one. When I saw that, I was like, that is an awesome paperweight to have on your desk. That's just amazing. If anybody can find out where to get that, I want one so bad. This is awesome. I'm a big fan of Javier Milei, if you haven't noticed, with my coverage as of recent, or, ever since I even heard about this guy. Yeah, afuera. That's right. Oh, I love that. Throw that in the chat there. Light Giver saying, afuera. Yeah, so out with the okay. So who is Javier Milei? Javier Milei is the new president of Argentina, who's been doing a bang up job of running the country of Argentina. He's a free market guy and a self-proclaimed anarcho-capitalist. I'd say if he's in the government, he's not much of an anarchist. But that being said, he's definitely in line with, I'd say the founding fathers of the United States of America, not the current administration in play. No, like the guys who started the whole thing, very much in tune with their sensibilities and what would you call that? Classical liberalism, libertarian, you can name it all kinds of things. It sort of falls in line with where I'm at, where the government should have very minimal powers, very minimal role in any situation, but nonetheless, let the market happen. And the market definitely needs property rights and courts to ensure property rights and contracts are upheld. So I think that's a fundamental of the marketplace, in my opinion. But anyway, Anti-Capitalist Cafe shuts down due to lack of capital. The Anarchist will close permanently on May 30th, according to a statement appended with Sloan's abolish work, people over profit, and land back. Now, this all comes from a place of just a complete misunderstanding of how resources are allocated. We live in a society where, abundance is actually something that's become normal in people's everyday lives. Abundance is all around us. It's not hard to get coffee these days. Just imagine how hard it would have been to get coffee 100 years ago in Canada, of all places. It's a long trek from South America, a long trek from all these places where coffee's made or grown, and then obviously all of the hands that are in the middle of all of this Coffee is not something that would have been easy to come by, but now it is super easy to come by. And why is that? Why is that? Do you think that's because of central authorities making that happen? Because I don't think that that's the way things happen. Do you think it was because of a bunch of people who are completely, just not wanting to work, abolishing work, and making people over profit and getting land back? If you're abolishing work and people over profit, well, whose land are you giving back? This is why it's always so strange when you listen to these people talk, because they contradict themselves entirely a lot. They say, we don't believe in property rights, but we want to give the land back to the indigenous people that own it. It's like, well, but you don't believe in property rights. You don't believe that they have any property to get back. Barely a year after opening, the anti-capitalist Toronto coffee shop is closing its doors due to lack of capital. That's right. The the Anarchist, a provider of sweet and savory pastries and trendy coffees, was founded last April as a subversive alternative to what it called the usual model of workers producing wealth for their parasitic employers. Is that what workers at a coffee shop think that they're doing? Like, I don't know. Has anyone in the chat here worked at a coffee shop? Is that what you think is happening? Yutaka is saying, Clyde, brew something. You believe me, something's in the works. We're gonna replace the Anarchist with our own coffee. This is gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Just mark my words. It is in the works. Clyde, do something. Yeah, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna do absolutely something. I'm not gonna open up a coffee shop that gives away coffee for free. Who are the hard laborers in this whole endeavor? This is what cracks me up. Instead, it'll close its doors permanently on May 30th, according to a statement appended with the slogans, "Abolish work, people over profit, and land back." The cafe was never able to employ more than one person, so the proprietor, Gabriel Sim Fewer, will be its own layoff. Oh, this cracks me up. This cracks me up. So this is the place. They have an Instagram with almost 5,000 followers, and yeah, it's it's been canceled. But this is a place that you can hang out, or was a place that you can hang out, pay nothing. Because apparently that's what anarchism is about paying nothing. I disagree. If you talk to an actual anarchist, they would say, no. If I provide a service, you're absolutely paying for it. But you could also give out your socialist and whatnot brochures at this coffee shop. Well, needless to say, it was not a success. It was not a success. It's not a very good business model. What needs to be done for socialist circles is it needs to be forced upon you. You need to get the state to make sure that you get the anarchist cookbook. That's pretty funny. That is pretty funny. Totally. That's up there. What do we have here? Trish Prue, member for 20 months. It's been that long. New song for PMJT. Think of the song. Think of the song. Should I stay or should I go? Should Justin stay or should he go now? LOL. The song song also applies to Biden. Yeah. The Let's Go Brandon. Let's Go Brandon song. But this is yeah, no, absolutely. And we're gonna see him. We're gonna see him take off. Take off, Hoser. Take off, This is something that's happening with Justin Trudeau at the moment. Even his own caucus doesn't want him. Oh, the jokes never end. The jokes never end. Anyway, this place, of course, they had a GoFundMe ages ago. Because if you have some crazy lefty scheme, you are allowed on GoFundMe. That's their MO at that organization. They allow for that kind of thing. But GoFundMe was boosting this fundraiser, helping the Anarchist Coffee Shop, the absolutely confused place that advocates for socialism and also anarchy at the same time, which, again, it confuses the crap out of me, because how do you have totalitarian, authoritarian rule, yet claim to be, or you want that and claim to be an anarchist? You know, I so hate authority that I want to have the ultimate authority over me that gives no wiggle room for decision making on my part. Nonetheless, an absolute failure, dismal failure once again, to the hilarity of everyone. Now, this is something that I like getting into this, because I think a lot of people fundamentally misunderstand how market economies work and why they're so beautiful, actually. And this coffee shop, the people involved in it obviously have a tremendous misunderstanding of how all of this stuff works. Like, the coffee wouldn't even make it to you if there wasn't a market economy with global commerce, like commerce around the world. Coffee wouldn't even get to Canada, let alone for you to be able to buy at such discounted rates and then sell it at your markup $5 coffee, kind of situation here. RX, member for 2 months, says, was great to meet you in Victoria. You and other speakers were great. So much fun. Hope your move is getting all figured out. Peace and love. Thank you so much, RX. Really appreciate that. That's great. Thank you so much. Yes, the move is going in a direction. We'll see how it all pans out, because that's, how did you even know? How did you know? Daifeichu, how did you know where I was going with this? Holy. I even have the page bookmarked. Wow. Okay, so somebody's in tune with exactly what I'm talking about here. Flat earthers of economics? What do you mean by that? What is that? What does that mean? Is that the Keynesian theory, perhaps? No, Mises Institute. Very, very great organization. There's been some turbulation in there because of all this Middle Eastern stuff that's been going on. Nonetheless, great essay here. This is a fantastic essay. It's called iPencil. Now, this gets into the beauty of how the market economy works and how things seem to just seemingly just happen, even though there's no central authority telling people what things to purchase and where to do it and how to do it in order to make one thing. And the beauty of this essay is it talks about the fact that one pencil that's so tremendously cheap to buy, the number 2 pencil, any one person who tried to assemble a team to create that one pencil would spend an exorbitant amount of money trying to accomplish that feat. And at the end of the day, the pencils would be tremendously expensive, yet they're not. And it's a question of, how does that work? How is it that works? And here's Milton Friedman actually talking about this sentiment specifically.
Look at this lead pencil. There's not a single person in the world who could make this pencil. Remarkable statement? Not at all. The wood from which it's made, for all I know, comes from a tree that was cut down in the state of Washington. To cut down that tree, it took a saw. To make the saw, it took steel. To make the steel, it took iron ore. This black center, we call it lead, but it's really graphite, compressed graphite. I'm not sure where it comes from, but I think it comes from some mines in South America. This red top up here, the eraser, bit of rubber, probably comes from Malaya, where the rubber tree isn't even native. It was imported from South America by some businessmen with the help of the British government. This brass ferrule, I haven't the slightest idea where it came from.
See, even he doesn't know how to do this
paint,
from a central
or the
authority.
paint that made the black lines, or the glue that holds it together. Literally thousands of people cooperated to make this pencil. People who don't speak the same language, who practice different religions, who might hate one another if they ever met. When you go down to the store and buy this pencil, you are in effect trading a few minutes of your time for a few seconds of the time of all those thousands of people. What brought them together and induced them to cooperate to make this pencil? There was no commissar sending out orders from some central office. It was the magic of the price system, the impersonal operation of prices that brought them together and got them to cooperate to make this pencil so that you could have it for a trifling sum. That is why the operation of the free market is so essential, not only to promote productive efficiency, but even more, to foster harmony and peace among the peoples of the world.
Absolutely. It's incredible. It's incredible. You nailed it there. Clutch it up with the so amazing when you break it down. It is so amazing when you break it down. It's such a beautiful thing to watch the market come to. Oh, what do I have in there? To watch the market come together and do things. You know, when there's a demand for something, people spontaneously make these things happen, and it's really interesting how it all works. Now, every time government gets involved, they screw it all up. I always liken it to throwing, a goldfish in the pond. Yeah, you think you're not doing much anything, but you throwing a goldfish in the pond, those things can multiply, and then it could be a detrimental thing to an ecosystem. And then what does the government try to do afterwards? Oh, there's been something that's messing with the ecosystem. Let's introduce some other things. I remember this. I remember there was growing up in Ontario, there was a mite, this little soybean eating mite that came over from Asia. So what was their answer to this? It was, okay, well, let's release these special ladybugs from Asia that eat these mites. Well, then next thing you know, we had ladybugs all over the place. And then it messed up the system there too. And then they had to keep making all these adjustments. And this is what the government does. They come in, they mess with an economy, and then they have to make more and more adjustments. Well, they feel like they have to make more and more adjustments rather than just getting the heck out of the way. Get the heck out of the way. Really, just get out of the way and let the market recover, because this is what really needs to happen. And this isn't what the Trudeau government is doing. They're not doing that at all. What are they doing? Well, they're coming in and they're injecting their idea of central authority, and we're going to fix everything. We're going to make the world a better place. And how are they going to do that? Well, they're going to do that by spending $400 billion in 4 years. That's right. Chrystia Freeland becoming Trudeau's finance minister in 2020. She has grown Canada's debt by more than $400 billion. Hey, what did we get out of that? What did we get out of any of that stuff? We got services rendered. Nothing long lasting. Nothing. Services rendered. We have nothing to show for it. Do we have one hospital to show for it? Do we have one bridge? Do we have one road? Do we have anything? Like, what did somebody in the chat, let me know. What did the Trans-Canada Highway cost? Like, what an undertaking. What an undertaking to make the Trans-Canada Highway. How many dollars and cents did that cost? I'll tell you what, it was nowhere near $400 billion dollars with a B. That's just outrageous. It's absolutely insane. She's a writer, not an economist. She's a terrible writer and a terrible economist. Absolutely. And now she's calling for tax hikes because she says the debt she created is an unfair burden on younger generations. Isn't that just amazing? Isn't that just peachy keen? Which to me is incredible because, well, here we have it. Chris on X says, Trudeau took 9 years to destroy the hope of home ownership in Canada. Now he's ranting at seniors, claiming that they don't understand. And of course, according to Freeland, it's an unfair burden on younger generations. The older generation, you know what I mean? It's like this, oh, we can't get the class warfare going. Oh, okay. We've been struggling with the race thing because people are seeing through it. Oh, they're not following through with the whole abortion thing anymore. People are seeing through that. Let's pit generation against each other. Let's put the older generations against the younger generations, and that's how we're gonna win this one. Hey, Trudeau, seniors didn't create this crisis. You did. You funded the gatekeepers to stop building and development. Ranting at seniors won't solve the crisis you created. RX with a $2 super chat says government has reversed Midas touch. It needs a name. What? Midas touch? Is that Midas? Reverse Midas touch. It needs a name. I don't know what you're getting at. Thank you for the super chat, though. It's time to replace the blame-shifting prime minister with a common-sense conservative leader who will build homes that Canadians can afford. See, I don't even like this sentiment here. The conservative leader who will build homes. Why is the government? Why do people assume this? I think this is a Canadian thing. I think where Canadians make this assumption that the government ought to be doing a lot of things. And I always hear this word, privatization. It's a word that socialists love to use, and it's a word that's charged. And they say things like, "Oh, well, they're looking to socialize this economy." It's like, well, what do you mean socialize? The word social, they're looking to privatize this thing. Well, privatizing. Well, what do you mean by that? There's a connotation. There's a negative connotation that says that this industry ought to be owned and run by government. You can look back at times where like the post office was run by private entities. The post office wasn't always even a government thing. The post office was run privately. And, back in the day, did you even know that like back in the day, I'm not sure if the Canada Post, but I know USPS, when it was private, they even got to the point where it was so busy that they were doing morning and afternoon runs. They would, they'd have mail in the morning and you have mail in the afternoon. And then the government took over and it got super inefficient. And now it's like, you get it when you get it. That's about it. And, it turns around. Now everybody gets everything from Amazon. But nonetheless, every time the government gets their hands on something, they do it terribly inefficient. And I just don't get that the sentiment of the government ought to do this thing. So, Prime Minister Trudeau is trying to build homes. What is this, Soviet Russia? No, get the heck out of the way. We don't need a conservative leader who'll build homes. We need a conservative leader who'll take all the red tape and tear it up. We need a conservative leader that will talk and negotiate with municipalities that are way too tough on builders and say, "Yo, not happening. You're not doing that." That's the kind of thing that I'd love to see. I'd love to see, pressure saying, "Well, we're not going to give you public funding if you keep making it difficult for people to build homes." Sorry, you have any idea how expensive it is to build homes these days? It is crazy. The regulation and permission alone. Permission. They want to call it a permit. What is a permit? A permit is just asking somebody, "Can I do something with my own property? Can I do a thing with my property?" That's where we are. Where we have to ask permission to do things with our own property. Nonetheless, here's Trudeau, what he has to say about the older generations.
Talk to an older generation of folks, they say, "Oh no, I remember I had to scrimp and save for years before we could set a down payment on a home. It was really hard, it was a big expense. Housing's always hard. It's not like, grandparents, loaf of bread used to cost me a nickel," or whatever it is. It's this idea that, oh no, housing was always the big expense, and it was always hard to get into housing. So they see young people saying, "Oh, it's hard to get into housing." I'm like, yeah, no, we lived that. And to explain to them, no, you didn't. there is
Hold on. So first off, if you lived through the 1980s, yeah, it was hard to get into housing. And a lot of people gave up on getting into housing at that time. So yeah, it was hard to get into housing. Now, was it easier then than it is today? Probably. Is that their fault, the older generation, for having timed the market? Absolutely not. It's the Prime Minister's fault for fostering the economic situation that we're sitting here in. I mean, if I was born, if I was a baby boomer, I'd be like, yeah, it was better times. Yeah, it was better times. Sure, the 80s crappy, pretty crappy. Why were the 80s crappy, by the way? What happened just before the 80s? Can anybody tell me? I'm going to put the chat in here. What happened specifically just before the 1980s that, I don't know, led to a really bad economic situation that took more than a decade for Canada to get out of? I don't know. Let's see if anybody in the chat has got this. I know that there's a bit of a delay on this one, but I'm waiting for this. Does anybody know? It's there was a particular thing that occurred just before that. Sorry. Okay. RX with the $5 super chat. King Midas would touch things and they turned to gold. Greek mythology. Why do I not know that part of Greek mythology? I know all the other things. Well, maybe not all the other things. But thank you so much for the super chat, and thank you so much for clarifying that. It cost you $7 to clarify that statement. My bad. I'm not up on that knowledge. What do we got going on here? We've got yeah, that's right. Trudeau Senior happened. That's right. And we got a lot of people replying to it saying the same thing. Yeah, Justin Trudeau's dad was in power just before things got really terribly hard for the older generations. And look at what we have now. You know, it's funny. History doesn't repeat, but it sure rhymes. It sure does rhyme. It's crazy how this all comes together in the end. It's really insane. So yeah, spamming Trudeau as an answer. Yeah, spamming Trudeau as an answer. That is the answer for sure. So yeah, Trudeau, when you're saying that it was easy, well, it was easy street before your dad came along, and then it would have been pretty good still had you not come along. Just throwing that one out there. Let's get more into what he has to say.
something foundationally different in this generation, that young people can have great jobs and a solid side hustle and shifted expectations, and they
Sorry, young people don't have great jobs. Sorry, that's just not true. Young people don't have great jobs. They don't. I mean, you could have a great job if the teachers and you know, in your government schools would teach you where to go. You'd have a great job if you got into the trades, but you went into, you know, you probably went into business. You probably went into, I don't know, coding. You probably went into one of these things that are likely going to be obsolete at some point, and are having a hard time getting a vocation. Should have got into the trades. Just throw that out there. Trades are great and they pay really well. Just throwing that one out there. But yeah, there's not a lot of prospects, you know, even to just get experience these days. When I was a young kid, what was I, 16 years old? You know, even before that, I had, you know, doing papers. Do kids do papers anymore? Do you see kids running around handing out the penny saver? Is that a thing? No, you don't see that. And then, you know, as a young kid, I got a job at a Tim Hortons. You see that anymore? Who's working at Tim Hortons these days? Who's working at entry-level positions where kids would normally get a job in the summertime? Who's doing that? Not a lot of people. There's not a lot of that happening. So, yes, well, we can all know the answer to that one. It's a bunch of people from other places on the planet that are over here bidding those jobs up and going to the job fairs. We've seen, and we're going to be talking about this later in the show, so I don't even need to dive too deep into this at the moment. But yeah, kids are not getting jobs for summertime because, well, we've opened up the floodgates.
Still can't find a place to actually start on that path towards home equity or home ownership. Like that shift is different. And part of it's the underinvestment in housing construction over decades. But there's
the shift into construction over decades. The price of building goods is overinflated. The regulation to even get permission to start building is the most expensive it's ever been. It's crazy to even try to enter the market, let alone make affordable housing. Nobody's making affordable. And I know Jagmeet Singh probably wants to come in and argue. I can hear the subconscious Jagmeet Singh jumping in there saying, if they just built cheaper houses, I don't know why they're making really expensive houses. Why do they bother making expensive houses? When everything on the market, even in my town, a 2-bedroom apartment goes for $2,750. That's an average price. It's not that they're making expensive housing. It's that housing is expensive no matter what they make. This is the case. It's crazy.
There's other things happening, and getting seniors to understand that there is something different, I think is a bit of a challenge that we're still working on.
No, seniors get it. Seniors get it, and a lot of people who own houses get this, especially people who have families. And I can't stress this enough. So people who have families, I still have that on the screen, spamming Trudeau as an answer. People who have families and have their house. So say somebody has their house purchased outright and they own it. Good for you. You got your house. That happened, and that was possible. But now you've got kids that have moved out, and they're having kids, and they want to buy a house, and you want to see your grandkids, but they can't live anywhere near you. No, they can't live anywhere near you because that house that you bought for $200,000 a couple decades ago, well, all of those houses in that neighborhood are worth like $1.5, $2 million. So your kids, they can't get into that. So they got to live somewhere way remote, way away from you. And do you think boomers are happy about that? Do you honestly think that boomers are happy about that? No, they're not happy about that. Gen Xers, yeah, they're not happy about that either. We're all caught in this, and this is a ploy. This is such a ploy to pit people against each other, and don't fall for it. Like, absolutely don't fall for it, because this is exactly what he's asking you to do. It's so crazy. Yeah, don't fall for this. It's the same as those pro-abortion people. Yeah, those those pro-life people bring that one up, so you fight each other, and then you don't focus on this guy. This guy, Justin Trudeau, is instrumental in causing all of this destruction to our economy. So don't come and turn around and say, oh, well, the boomers, you should blame the boomers because they had it so easy, because they lived before I destroyed the economy, right? Don't blame it on them. Absolutely not. And boomers, like I just demonstrated, they're not happy that their families have to move so far away from them because they can't afford housing. And that sucks. And obviously, people don't want to sell their home and go buy something somewhere else. It really, really sucks. Don't give up your guns, keep them. Okay. Yeah, don't give up your guns. Absolutely. Protect all your property. That's my thought on that. I don't care whether it's a garden rake or a firearm. Protect your property. It's your right to private ownership. That's my thoughts on that. Absolutely. But yeah, of course, this is where we're going with this. And so what is he trying to do in all of this? Demonize, the older people versus younger people in Canada. What is he trying to do with this? Well, it's pretty easy to figure out. Is Trudeau going to introduce a home tax? He just had a secret meeting with an entity called Generation Squeeze. And guess who has heavily funded this entity with taxpayers' money? It's truly unbelievable. And this is Brian Lilly talking about this.
Private secret town hall meeting with Generation Squeeze, Professor Paul Kershaw, who is a strong advocate. He calls it generational fairness, which is all the language that Trudeau uses all the time. They have now put out part of that secret town hall in a podcast, but they did not release the Q&A portion of the podcast. Now, Paul Kershaw, as I said, isn't just an advocate on this. He's someone that the Trudeau government has funded continually. Even the Public Health Agency of Canada funds this group for some reason that I don't understand. They're all about housing, and PHAC is funding them. Canada Mortgage and Housing is funding them. The government has funded Paul Kershaw to write a study on why there should be a home tax. And we know, I believe it was the 2019 election, there were...
Did you catch that? Still studying home equity tax. A tax on your equity. They'll tax anything. So, it looks like you got a piece of property there. It looks like the value of it's gone up a whole bunch. Yeah? It looks like we want a slice of that pie too. Well, we haven't sold it. Well, if you did, you'd have a whole bunch of money now, wouldn't you? And you could probably borrow against it. So we want some of that. Holy cow. They're coming for your cash. And they're justifying it by saying, it's generational fairness to say you should give up some, you should pay your fair share. And where's that money go? Does that go to the next generation? No, it goes to foreign aid. It goes to all kinds of other things. What about, where's the fairness in all the spending that Trudeau's been doing? Well, no, we need less taxes. Absolutely less taxes altogether.
In the 2019 election, there were a bunch of policy proposals put forward by various liberal constituency associations. And the number one, or one of the top ones, was a primary residence home tax. And the longer you kept your home, the smaller the tax would be. But if you sold it within 2 years, you might pay a 15% tax and, things like that. So they keep coming back to this idea, and then they say they're not going to do it. I think they're looking at it again. I think that Trudeau's language lines up with it, and this is something that would be incredibly unpopular.
So this is crazy. This concept of they've always stayed away from certain things taxing them. They won't tax your primary residence. And so what if you buy a house and you this is the only way to buy a nice house. You buy a crappy house in the beginning and then you work your way up. It's the only way to do it because houses are so expensive. But now you have to, every time you do that next step, you got to pay a 15% tax. That's just stopping people from moving up in the world. It's killing upward mobility economically. It's terrible. It's a terrible idea. But, some people would argue, well, we're not going to, don't do that because, there are other, tax, other properties or, secondary properties. Just stay away from your primary residence. Now, Norman Spector put this out there. The PM was out in Vancouver. Excuse me, I'm drinking these wobbly pops to give me the burps. But it's my birthday, so whatever, I'm allowed to do that. The PM was out in Vancouver for a public announcement. His post itinerary, which supposed to detail his calendar, only said he was making oceans conservation announcement. Later that day, Trudeau sat down with a secret conversation with Paul Kershaw, the founder of Generation Squeeze. So he goes in on this about this exactly. Eyes on your prize. Look out. After secret town hall activities, Trudeau again flirting with taxing your primary residence. Now, I don't disagree with Norman Spector here. I just wanted to add a little bit more of the conversation. And I wanted to say, I'm with you on not taxing primary residents, but putting taxes on investment properties is essentially taxing renters. That should also be avoided. The rental market is already insane as it is. And this is seriously really got to drill this into people. No tax that gets taxed on any business or anybody who runs anything, any kind of piece of capital for the purpose of business is going to be paying out of pocket. Never. All it does is it increases the price of the consumer item at the end of the chain. This is how economies work. This is how all of this works. So, yeah, if Trudeau puts a tax on primary residences and selling primary residences, this basically kills your ability to have upward mobility as someone who wants to buy into a crappy little home and then get yourself into like a townhome and then eventually get into a lot with a little tiny house onto it and then buy a bigger one and then maybe the one with the garage you wanted and all of this. It takes years and years and years to do this. But Trudeau is, with this kind of tax system, is essentially cutting that off. It's cutting you off and stopping you from being able to work your way up. Now, what if he taxes, investment properties? You got guy who's like, well, I want to be smart with my money and I'm going to buy my house and I'm going to work my way up through that ladder. But while I'm doing that, I'm also going to acquire other properties and I'm going to rent them out to people. That's a service. It's a service that a lot of people do, and they do it. Yeah, there's slumlords, but yeah, there's a lot of good landlords out there. There's a ton of them. But what's he doing with this whole thing? You tax that? What does that do? Taxing that just increases the rate of rent. That guy's not going like, oh, dang, I get less revenue now every month. No, he's going, wow, I have to pass that on to the renter. So the renters are going to pay that. And if during the whole concept of this, he's buying more rental properties and his primary residence is getting dinged every time he moves up in life, what was he going to do? He's going to pass that down onto the next person. The next person's going to have to pay this. No entrepreneur is sitting on a tax burden and going, shucks, I guess there goes my bottom line. No, it's raise the prices. Raise the prices so that the end user pays a little bit more. That's in any market. It doesn't matter if you're talking housing, you're talking coffee. You put a tax on coffee, do you think the coffee shop is going to keep the price at what it is? No, the price is going to reflect the new tax on coffee. This is always how it works. So yeah, you want to stifle your people's ability to move their way up in the world? This is what you do. You want to stifle your ability for people to even be able to rent something until they can afford a down payment to buy a house? Well, you're ruining that opportunity too. You're absolutely destroying that. And that's what this whole generational fairness is all about. Punish people for having done the right thing. Punish people for trying to do the right thing. All because this guy can't admit that he's destroyed the Canadian economy. And that's really where we stand right now. Ask me how I really feel about it. Sorry, I'm getting worked up. I get worked up about these things because it affects me personally. This specifically affects me personally. Guys, I've been going through this. I've been dealing with this situation with housing, the housing shortage, getting kicked out of our place as a family, and then, going forward and fighting in this marketplace with apparently 1 million new people this year. 1 million new people I'm bidding along with for a new place where I can call home and I can lay my head down and talk. And tuck my kids in at night. This is where we're at with this. But I'm not the only one talking about it. This is what's great about social media. This is what's great about these spaces. Going on places like YouTube, going to places like Instagram, Twitter. Even TikTok. I don't really like TikTok or go there, but you can go there and check out what's happening in the news and what's happening about a lot of these stories. And one guy that I'm bringing on today, one guy that I've been watching for some time, who's been talking about these stories, talking about what's happening on the streets here in Canada, and really how many people, the thing that a lot of people don't want to talk about, he's been going on about and bringing this story to the forefront and doing it in a way that's digestible, a way that really brings people to a position of being more informed, because, well, guess what? The traditional media is not informing us. They're not telling us the story. They're not telling us what's going on. So I want to introduce to you today Harrison Faulkner. Thank you so much for joining me today. And you guys just put out a piece recently, you and Lauren Southern, on Tenet Media, and I was actually really blown away by how you presented the story. Thank you for making that, and thank you for joining me tonight.
Clyde, thanks for having me. I was just watching the show before you came in, and I think I heard you say that it was your birthday today.
It's my birthday, yeah.
Oh, right on. Well, happy birthday, and it's nice to join you to be able to talk about this. As you point out, I think mass immigration is the most important issue facing this country. It's the most important issue facing young Canadians, regardless of wherever you come from or whatever background you're faced with, however much money you have, this issue impacts you. It's not just about housing, it's about our culture, it's about everything else. So it really is the most important issue, and I'm always happy to speak with you about it.
Well, it's crazy. It's a big issue, and it's divided a lot of people on different avenues. And this is why I wanted to bring you on, because I really appreciated the coverage that you gave. You're showing a lot of the hard-hitting issues, and of course, everyone wants to jump to the conclusion that, hey, you've got some sort of racial prejudice because you're talking about this story. But what you did was you showed that there's so many victims on the other side. It's not just a case that Canadians. The average Canadian's a victim of mass immigration and, the jobs and housing market getting flooded. But these people are also getting scammed in order to come here in the first place.
That's right. So, of course, there are victims on all sides of this. I think that telling the story without acknowledging that is disingenuous. And I also think, however, if we're going to look at who the victims are that we really ought to care about, ultimately, that would be the Canadian people here in this. That does not mean that there aren't international students who are being victimized, who are being scammed. And I think the piece does a good job at highlighting that. Let's just look into some of the ways this happens. Of course, we've heard about the fake admissions letters. My immediate gut reaction is that some of them probably knew they were fake letters, and some of them didn't know they were fake letters and were genuinely duped, if you will. You also have these completely fake colleges, which we all know about, that are not colleges at all. Some of them have one actual staff. It's ridiculous. There aren't even classrooms. Some of these colleges are in strip malls in Brampton and Mississauga. So they are tricked into believing that they're going to some legitimate campus when they're not even going to what could even be described as a school, let alone a college. So yeah, I mean, look, and then of course, what are these students faced with when it comes to living, right? Where are they living? With what money? They don't have a lot of money, and some of them are living 5 to a room, 5 to a kitchen. I've heard stories of people actually putting up tents inside of their houses and renting those tents out for hundreds of dollars a month. So what that does, of course, is it sets off a string of problems that are faced by these students, but it also has trickle-out impact on Canadians, young Canadians trying to get into the rental market, trying to get into the housing market. It really does. All roads lead back to this being a major problem with no benefit at all to young Canadians. And that's why I think this issue is so important. And that's why we're starting to see, Clyde, just how much this issue is gripping the online dialogue in this country. Everyone is talking about it. Everybody that I've spoken to that's a young Canadian thinks the same way. It's the biggest issue. So it's really come to dominate our politics and our social discourse, and for good reason.
Well, like I said, if you bring it to the light, the quick way of dismissing it is you're some sort of bigot, right? And that's the way they like to dismiss this. Obviously, the liberals don't want to talk about it because they brought this about. This is a story about failed policy. This is a story about finding loopholes in laws, calling what was it? Mark Miller called them a very lucrative asset. I mean, that's not how we talk about people. As far as I recall, growing up in Canada, we were always very compassionate people. People aren't considered assets or lucrative at that. But we're in a situation where it looks like it's the end of the summer job for Canadian kids. It's completely we're bringing in people that claim themselves students, but they're not gaining skills. They don't come with skills. They're not learning skills. They're coming with no experience, and they're flooding the market of entry level positions. How is that going to work out for the future?
I think you're right that it is, at this point, it's the end of the summer job as we know it. And a lot of young Canadian kids are going to struggle to break into the job market. They're going to struggle to get into a job market, which, as you point out, allows you to build up enough money, allows you to build up experience to get yourself into a better career, into a better job, and that job would allow you to get a house. So think about it. It's a serious, serious issue. Ultimately, what needs to happen is this program needs to be completely wiped out of Canada. We can't have this right now. We're not in a position to be opening up our student visa system when we know what the consequences are going to be and when we know the situation faced by young Canadians. Maybe in 20 years, 15 years, the situation might allow for us to be giving out hundreds of thousands, upwards of 1 million active student visas. But right now, we can't do that when Canadians are struggling, when Canadians are the ones who are having to deal with this problem. And so ultimately, this cap that the federal government has put in place, which is going to bring down the numbers to around still just a bit higher than what the numbers were before Trudeau came to office. That's going to be the cap that's going to be put in place. That's still going to cause a lot of problems for us. That's still going to be around 300,000 student visas next year. Okay, so this is a major issue, and we can't also just allow the people that are here who have expiring permits and no skills to stay. One of the things that the issue that we're seeing right now, Clyde, is a large number of these students have expiring permits. They know that their time in Canada is up unless they get somehow rescued either with another permit extension or with immediate PR. That's what we've been seeing in Prince Edward Island. This is what we've been seeing in Brampton. Large protests that are increasing. The anger and frustration among these students is increasing. They feel as though they are they are, what's the right word? They are.
I'm thinking I feel like there's an entitlement because
exactly,
I've watched some of the footage of you. I've watched some of the footage of you because you went to PEI to talk to these students, and I mean, people might say, "Oh, this is gotcha journalism," but when you're on the street, you can see this. Like, how is the feeling of these protests? Now, these are obviously students that came over with the presumption that they're temporary. They're not coming over to immigrate. This is a temporary thing. They're going to be a student in Canada or a student in Canada, take those skills and go back to their home country, and that's their thing. Now, obviously, we can see what their actual intentions are by the behavior, right? They've come here, Prince Edward Island apparently being more lenient on some of the a little bit more lax on the rules on getting in the first place. And then once your foot's in the door, then it's like, maybe it'll be easier to extend, and then stay permanently. What's the feeling like when you're interviewing these people? Obviously, you sense a sense of entitlement, but like, do they feel that they're actually going to win this battle? Because obviously, it's when people see this, they're confused. What are these foreigners doing in our country demanding they get to stay? They came here temporarily.
Yeah. I think they have been told along their process. They've been told before they even left. Let's just take India as the example, because almost all of the protesting students are from India. Before they got to Canada in India, someone told them, maybe it was an education agent, told them that they would be able to get PR by just showing up. And then when they landed, they had people in their ear telling them that this is how easy it's going to be. This is how you're going to be able to get to stay. And so they have convinced themselves that they were promised somewhere along the process that they were going to become Canadians out of this whole thing. There was that promise was never given. In fact, here's something that a lot of people don't recognize. When you apply to get your student visa in Canada, regardless of whatever country you come from, it doesn't matter. If you're from England, the United States, or from India or China, when you have to speak to an immigration officer, someone who represents the government, in an interview. And if you say that you plan to stay in Canada after your visa, you're not getting your visa. So all of these students with international student visas told an immigration officer that they were going to go back home when their visa expired, right? So they essentially, all these protesting students knowingly lied to an immigration officer because their intention was to stay and their intention was to become essentially Canadian. Now, going back to my original point, it's not just the students. There are outside organizations that are trying to keep all of these new students in this country. And I believe that is selling out Canadians. I believe that it is a betrayal of Canadians to let people who are supposed to leave stay and continue to cause an impact in our system. So and most of these groups are ethnic-based groups, Indian ethnic-based groups that are based in Canada. These groups, along with some politicians, including all the way up to Jagmeet Singh, have been trying to lobby the government to give all of these protesting students permanent residency, automatically permanent residency. It's an astonishing thing if that happens. They have support, but a lot of people that I speak to are afraid to speak out, but they all say, this is out of control. This can't happen. We can't be just granting permanent residency to people because they protest when they have no skills that are required in our economy. So, I mean, it's astonishing, but they do have this sense of entitlement. Someone somewhere along their process told them it was going to be easy.
Well, I learned that of the people in these programs that are graduating, which is not very many actually, are graduating from these programs.
Right.
But when they do graduate, an overwhelming rate of them is in business management. As if we need a ton of business managers in Canada. Yeah. We need tradespeople. We need nurses. We need doctors. We need people with skills. Stuff that you don't get in a few months in a college. Something that takes many, many years, and there's not enough Canadians getting into it for our own domestic problems that we didn't encourage enough people to get into these for decades and decades. But nonetheless, if we are going to import people, which I'm in favor of immigration, as long as it's people who are coming to aid Canada and not coming at the detriment of Canada by taking up positions that, Canadians could obviously fill a lot of these positions. But you get into some of these organizations. So I'm guessing you're talking about some of the firms that help out with the legal, the immigration, help them fill out the paperwork for their visas. Now, you mentioned that it was ethnically based, and,
right.
and I'm curious, is this because of the influx of people from one particular region? They can get a lot of business if they speak the language. I guess it's Punjabi for a lot of these
Yes.
people that are coming over.
Yes. So what I was mentioning was basically there are groups called, one of them is called the Naujawan Support Network. This is just an organization that seems to be set up to assist the protesting students in Brampton. There's also the International Sikh Students Association. That's another one. And it goes all the way up to such large organizations like the World Sikh Organization, who have been lobbying the federal government to grant all these students permanent residency. You're talking about immigration consultants and immigration lawyers. That is worth the conversation, because what we see here is a group of people who are profiting directly off of this system, who are selling what's called an LMIA, upwards of $30,000 to $40,000. That is.
Well, let's get into that. Let's explain the
let's do it.
LMIA, because the
Okay.
LMIA, I don't know what the acronym stands for, but
Yes.
it means like a permit to work that's tied to a business where
Yes.
you're stuck. You're indentured to that business, correct?
So an LMIA stands for a labor market impact assessment. Essentially, if we're going to play
Okay.
this legally, all right, so let's say you're an employer, Clyde, and you're trying to hire me and I'm a foreigner. What you need to do is you need to go to the federal government and pay them $1,000 and write out a labor market impact assessment application. And this application would you would justify on this application to the federal government that you've done everything you could to hire a Canadian, but there was no Canadian that would apply to your job and be the right fit. So now you have to hire a foreigner, and that would be in my case me. So what's going on here? That's basically the LMIA idea, and the federal government set it up so that Canadians were put first, that employers couldn't just rush to hire foreigners at such cheap prices.
When there's a bunch of stuff there's loopholes you got to go through. So I know some businesses that have had to hire people, and they're told like you have to put out a help wanted thing. You have to give ample opportunity for Canadians that want the job to apply for it, and that's part of the whole thing. But it sounds like these people are using the system, and they're kind of putting the cart before the horse. They want the foreigner. They don't necessarily want the Canadians, and maybe they're even ignoring the calls that are coming in from Canadians that want the job.
Absolutely. So that's the legal side of the LMIA, but that's never really how it's put into use. What happens now is that there are immigration consultants and immigration lawyers that are actually registered by a professional college of immigration consultants. It's astonishing. They will basically preload up upwards of 20 LMIAs for a truck driver position, right? And they will get them pre-approved by the government without a name attached to it. Most of the time an LMIA has to have a name attached. That would be my name if it was you, Clyde, who was applying to the government to hire me as a foreigner. But you can in fact apply for a blank LMIA. It only costs,
that's unbelievable.
Yeah, and it only costs $1,000. But LMIAs in this aftermarket are going for upwards of $30,000. So someone is cashing in big. Someone is cashing in $25,000 to $29,000 every time someone gets an LMIA. And who pays for it? It's the international student. It's the newcomer who needs a job with no prior skills, probably can't even speak English, who will pay $30,000 to get a job, and that job will get them enough PR points, accumulate enough points to eventually try to make a PR application. So we have people that are coming in,
but in the process, they have like several years. They have several years where they have an indentured servant that's paying off a debt, and they're screwed. They put them in horrible circumstances, horrible living conditions, and they give them basically kids' summer jobs, and pay them very little. It's mind-boggling that this is happening in Canada.
That's right. But I also think it's important to highlight this. I haven't seen it in practice, but this is what we know is going on. But I also believe that many of these students are making the calculated decision and know exactly what they're doing, and are willingly putting themselves into this position. They're not. I don't think many of them are actually being coerced into it. I think that many of them know the equation in front of them and know what needs to be done, aren't actually either capable of accumulating the required amount of points that would make them stay in Canada. Remember, this is about your ability to speak English. It is about your ability to write, to communicate. Some of them either are incapable of it, don't want to try and don't want to do it, and don't want to put in the effort, and they would rather just pay up the money to put themselves in this position. So yes, I think many of them are being victimized. I don't think all of them are being victimized. I think many of them know what's going on and are putting themselves through it. This just ultimately goes back to this summer jobs fiasco that we're facing, this issue that is impacting Canadians. We're allowing this to go on, knowing that there is labor fraud, immigration fraud right in front of us that is ruining prospects for young Canadians. And the government doesn't care. The government just keeps going, and they just try to pull the wool over everyone's eyes and make sure that nobody sees the fake LMIA Instagram ads that I will sometimes post when I see them on social media, because people have to see this. It is outrageous.
So there's like a whole circuit on social media to recruit people to do these LMIs.
All of these immigration consultancies and immigration legal services, they're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, and they're sometimes actually on X, until usually if I find it, then I will retweet it and they get a lot of comments. But what they do is they just basically they'll do a couple of things. Sometimes, as is the case with one of these immigration consultancies, they will have a gentleman who will stand there and say, I have 25 pre-approved LMIAs for truck drivers. No English needed. This is a real video. Other times, they will have a series of videos showcasing their successes, their client success stories, such as securing student visas for Indians who have entered Canada on a visitor visa, who have come to Canada as a tourist, and these immigration consultants will flip their tourism visa for a student visa before they go home, and they've got their spot at, say, Seneca or Algoma or one of these colleges. It's all about kind of advertising your services on TikTok and on Instagram, with the hope that other people in India will see it and will say, okay, when I come to Canada, I'm going to use this gentleman's services, and I'm going to get to stay in Canada.
So my question is how is this all legal? So you're talking about committing, these are acts that are like, so for example, visa fraud, coming into Canada, saying that you're coming here for the purpose of visiting, and then changing your status immediately when you get here. That's visa fraud. Now, I know these things are hard to prove, but when you have an agency that's like putting out Instagram posts saying, come to our agency, we help you commit visa fraud, why is nobody cracking down on this? That's the serious question here.
Yeah, I mean, when it's tough to know exactly what is and isn't technically a visa fraud, and I will just say a lot of these guys, once I've started talking about them, they start to watch the videos and they start to see what I say about them. So I want to be careful. But the reality is, the reason that they're allowed to do this, Clyde, is because these lawyers and consultants have found a loophole in our system. There is a loophole that has not been closed that has allowed all of this to happen, and that if you want to go back to who's really to blame here, it's the people who have the ability to shut down these loopholes. It's the ability to it's on the people who can say, oh yeah, when you come into our country as a visitor, you don't get to change your status until you go back home. Why not? Why do we allow anything else?
That's fair.
And why do we allow any business to have an LMIA, a blank LMIA without an actual applicant's name, right? Why do we allow a business to end up holding 13 or 14 truck driver LMIAs or dishwasher LMIAs? I don't believe for a second that you couldn't find 4 16-year-olds who would do a dishwasher job. I just don't, that are Canadian. And here's
you would eventually. So it is hard. Like, it is hard. I know a lot of entrepreneurs that have businesses and they're struggling to find young people that want to do jobs. And there's a myriad of different reasons for it. There's They just don't wanna. They're not being forced to. Parents are not encouraging kids to go out and get jobs. But then also, there's not enough economic incentive. Like you're not getting a huge pay for a lot of these jobs. So a lot of kids are like, yeah, it's not worth my time, which is terrible, because I don't think that's the point of getting a summer job. I'm going to encourage my kids vociferously, I guess is the word, when it comes time for them to get summer jobs, because the real value in it is not the pay. The real value in it is instilling work ethic and learning from, being in a position where you can't just say, you're not the boss of me. Well, you are the boss of me. Okay, I got to do what I got to do. And this is the learning curve that an entry level position should have. It shouldn't be a person who's raising a family on an entry level position job. But then this gets into further protestation, where these people who are working in these lines of work then start protesting the government for raises in minimum wage and things like that, which lead to more economic downturn. And what's all the purpose? It's because we're fitting people in the wrong lines of work, and we're doing it for all the wrong reasons. And at the end of the day, what is really the ultimate goal here?
I'm really not sure what the ultimate goal is, because the more you think about it, the less it becomes obvious, or the tougher it becomes to try to find a target of what the real idea behind it is. But I will say this: I think that we're now at a point with these what you would consider to be entry level jobs, right? Let's take a fast food restaurant, or something in a similar space. We're now at the point in most major cities and smaller cities in this country that those jobs, a lot of young Canadians know that actually most of those jobs are already taken by international students. If you go if you patronize these businesses, you know what I'm talking about. You go to Tim Hortons, you know what I'm talking about. You go to grocery stores, larger department stores, you know what I'm talking about. I think a lot of young Canadians look at that and say, Am I going to be the only Canadian working this job? Is it really actually going to be the case? Is it going to be the case that I might not even be able to properly communicate with my fellow coworkers because many of these people don't even properly speak English? We're now at a point where I think that's actually coming into mind for a lot of young Canadians. Everyone can see it. And it would cross my mind if I were 16 and I were looking for a summer job. It would. Because that's what I see whatever is around me. That is one thing that I think is taking place. I think another thing is that with this influx of international students that are working in these jobs, well, there isn't really any need to keep these salaries at a competitive level. You have so many people coming in that are desperate to work, that need the work, that you're not actually incentivizing young Canadians to work these jobs who should be working these jobs, because businesses can keep some of these salaries quite low. I know that's not the case everywhere, but I think that's happening. I mean, just just do the math. I mean, if you have a large number of people that are needing this job, well, you don't have a need to raise the salary for that job. So I think that's also a factor. Ultimately, it really is a major problem. And Canadians are starting to speak out about it. But, I want to go back to something you said, Clyde, that we've been conditioned to basically say, that any talk about this could be dangerous because it could be deemed as racist, and it could be, we could be labeled as, xenophobic for opposing mass immigration. And it makes it more difficult when a significant number of those people come from one country. Right? It's not our choice. It wasn't our decision that over 50% of them, it feels like, have come from India. That's the case. But the reality is,
in one particular province of India, exactly. It's not even really like that's exactly. Unusual. It's very unusual.
It's very strange. But that's the situation we have. And we can either look at it and say, well, if we speak out about this, it's just going to be bad for us. Or we can say, no, this is not right. This is not normal. Our futures matter. the future that I want for my children and my grandchildren is of concern to me. And I know that many Canadians share that same concern for their future generations. So it needs to be addressed. It needs to be spoken up about. And who cares what people call us at this point? Because it actually matters. I know there are plenty of Indo-Canadians who are just as upset about this, maybe even more so than I am. So I don't care what people want to call me. There's no time at this point to waste for it.
Yeah, well, I've had Darshan Maharaja on the show,
Right.
and he's been here for decades and decades, and he says the influx of young men in one particular region of the country, all from one place where they all speak the same language, and there's not much of an incentive for them to pick up English or French or whatever it happens to be in that region. It creates a lot of animosity with the locals, and then it ends up trickling down, and then guys like Darshan are feeling the feedback, even though they're not part of that group. They're Canadians, just like the rest of us, and that's something that's awful. I'm going to get into some of these comments here that people have left here. Rick Yem for $5 says, I have sacrificed my whole life to end up with my tiny overpriced home, all to have this group of politicians making it so I could lose it. And this is obviously referring to what we were talking about before with the taxes that they're putting on equity on homes. We got Norm Nicholson for $20 says, lovely to have met you in Victoria. You're a sensible man that speaks up for the concerns of common Canadians, and you're more than welcome. Happy birthday! Thank you so much, and hopefully, Harrison, we see you at the event next year. It'd be great to have you part of that as well. You're so well spoken. It'd be great to have you there. RX says happy birthday, peace and love. We also have G Meister saying, Harrison, you're doing a great job. Thank you, and True North. You guys have been doing a bang up job talking about a lot of things that are almost taboo in this country, where you can actually feel comfortable reading your articles because they're not over the top, they're not tabloid, they're very well thought out, and I really appreciate the work that you guys have been doing. Linda Hunter here said, gifted membership to the channel. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. G Meister adding another comment for $20 saying, my first job at 16 was a bus boy. I cleared and set the tables, washed the dishes, made desserts and salads, and went to the basement freezer for cooks for $4 an hour. And I was happy to learn what hard work was. And that's essentially what we all should be doing. And that a lot of those opportunities are being taken away from people. And this is what we're really talking about in this scenario. At least this is what I'm talking about. This is what it seems like you've been bringing forward with your coverage. Can you tell people where to find you?
Absolutely. So you can find me on X at Harry_Faulkner, and you can find my work at True North. That would be at tnc.news. You can find it on YouTube, Rumble, if you're lucky, Facebook, but we know Canadians don't really have access to that anymore. And where else? That would be about it. I have new content that goes up on Mondays and Thursdays. And we have a weekday, a middle of the week podcast, usually Tuesday or Wednesday.
That's been a bang up job you've been doing. It's really, really fantastic. And glad to see you going out on Tenet with Lauren Southern. That was a fantastic thing. Lauren's going to be in here soon. I'm not sure when, but she'll be popping in. You guys did a fantastic job with that. I mean, I encourage people on social media. I also left the link in the description of this video to go over there, check that out. Again, you guys have been doing tremendous work, bringing light to this whole situation where is a media blackout, is a complete media blackout on essentially immigration and all of that. So again, Harrison, thank you so much for joining me tonight, and I wish you the best, and hope to have you back again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Clyde. Enjoy the weekend.
All right. Cheers, brother. Awesome. So that was really cool. I really appreciate Harrison coming in here. I noticed that there's a few more chats that popped up in the meantime as we were doing the outro. Steve's Hyde with $20 says, at some point we'll have to just laugh when being called names. True North, keep it up. And please, keep it up, please. Also, happy birthday, Clyde. How old are you? Like 36? I'm 42 this year. It's crazy, unbelievable that how did I make it this far? How did I make it to this ripe old age of 42? I don't know. People say I don't look 40. I got a baby face. If I didn't grow this beard and wear these glasses, nobody would take me seriously. I'm not kidding about that. Ableman8 for $20 says, Clyde, I love your stuff. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Are you in favor of immigrants who want to assimilate, become citizens, and love Canada? Absolutely. I'm in favor. Yeah, of course. I'm a product of that. My mom and dad are both from foreign countries, and we've all assimilated to become Canadians here. My wife also from Japan, and immigrants come into Canada all the time, assimilate, become Canadian. It's great. It's great to share culture. It's great to share all kinds of things. So I'm massively for that. If so, Canada increased difficulty of citizen test, ban dual citizen, so we pledge to only Canada. That's going to be difficult. That's going to always be difficult because people are always going to hold on to opportunity. That you're going to have a hard time getting that happening. But that's definitely a good question to throw out there. So thank you so much for the super chat. But yeah, I want to get into that. I want to get into that because emigration is the flip side of all of this. Emigration is the idea of people going, you know what, forget it. I'm not sticking around. Oh, by the way, Newbie431 with a $10 super chat saying, happy birthday, dude. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. But yes, emigration is the flip side of the coin. Emigration is the idea that people, for whatever reason, are take off, hoser, like get out of here. And this is something we have to come to grips with as well, because this immigration flood is causing a crisis that's doubly impacting everything by getting people to want to bail out and say, forget it, I'm out of here, I can't afford to live here anymore. And this is currently something that I'm going through with my family. And obviously I'm not giving up my Canadian citizenship, never doing that, but this is something that I might be going through in the very near future. Again, another super chat here from Rick. My bad. Happy birthday, Clyde. Thank you so much, Rick Yem. I really appreciate that. Anyway, I want to get into the next segment because my next guest is fantastic and has been talking about this in particular for a very, very long time, and was thrown out to the wolves because of her talking about this, and then later completely vindicated because, well, reality's happening, folks. You can ignore it for so much time, but eventually it comes and it bites you right in the tuchus. So welcome to the stage, Lauren Southern. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's always a pleasure having you. And I love your set, by the way. Your set's awesome. It brings me right back to my childhood.
I asked for retro Cascadian cabin core, and I think they gave it to me.
They nailed it.
Yeah.
They nailed it. Absolutely. But yeah, so you've drawn a lot of attention lately. You've come back. You're doing your usual thing. You said forget it. You're not living up to your end of the bargain. I'm gonna live up to mine, and I'm gonna talk about this stuff. And one of the things that really triggered a lot of people recently was a tweet that you put out, and I absolutely love it because, well, it definitely. It shows a lot of what's happening here in Canada. And this tweet, of course, is the I love Indian food holding a ice cap from Tim Hortons. And I mean, you set the mood. You set the mood with that one, and it really let people know where you were going with this. Tell us, where were you going with this?
I mean, it's crazy to me. There was a whole documentary on Netflix. They did a whole investigation into the fact that brands like Hollister only hired hot people, right? Yet when you have a company here in Canada that literally only hire one minority group who also happen to be really nervous about being deported and really willing to work for low wages, you're not allowed to point that out. Why? Well, you're a racist, but also that racist label conveniently works out for mega corporations who are pretty keen on the idea of importing legal slavery, in my opinion. So I think it's a joke, and it's a joke that works because it's true and everyone sees it around them. So it's funny to point it out, but there's also a much more sinister level to it of I'm trying to point to a very obvious problem in our society of the importation of a slave labor class that is destroying opportunities and, wage bargaining for the working class in this country. And it's mostly being completely ignored by our politicians and by our media because of this label racist that people are so afraid of.
Well, it's eerily reminiscent to what's happened to other groups of people throughout history. And I'm not talking about slavery, but I'm talking about indentured servitude that's happened here in Canada. It's happened in the United States. It's happened in other Western countries. And here in Canada, on the West Coast, we had Chinese and Japanese people come over as indentured servants to work on the railroad, treated tremendously terribly. And now we try to teach that in schools and tell people don't do that. We saw what happened after the potato famines and Irish people coming over and being indentured into servitude and being literally worked to the bone, worked to death in labor situations where they had no other choice. It's that or get swimming. We're not even going to provide you a boat to go home if you want to get out of this. And now it's happening again, but now it's taboo. We're not allowed to talk about it because somebody's benefiting from this whole thing.
Totally. And people can say, oh, well, they're being paid a wage, right? So this isn't slavery. Is it a living wage? No. What are we seeing in Toronto? What are we seeing in Vancouver? We're seeing the rent prices skyrocket because we simply do not have enough housing for the people in these cities. And if you go to Our Canada Housing Too, which is a fantastic subreddit, there are plenty of Kijiji ads, Craigslist ads they post every day showing absolute squalor rentals up for $1,000 that these people working at Tim Hortons can barely afford. Some of them are living 15, 16, 17 people to a house, sharing a basement. And what that does as well is people can be like, oh, well, whatever, what I see all liberals say is, who's going to clean the toilets? Who's going to make your coffee? If it's not for these immigrants, you should be happy. Well, okay, even if I'm being very racist, first of all, but even if I'm being
it reminds me of the Kelly Osbourne. Didn't she say that? She famously said, Donald Trump, who's going to clean your toilets if it's not for the Hispanics? Oh, no. Did you really say that? You didn't mean that, did you? Oh, goodness. Yeah, that is a horrible train of thought.
Yes, it is. But that's what's going on up there. A little sociopathic, guys. But if you even think of it just from a purely selfish perspective, as someone who was born in Canada, we don't have the infrastructure for this. And because we don't have the infrastructure for this, it's getting overwhelmed. Your streets are getting more crowded. Your housing prices are going up. Your ability to bargain for wages is going down because, you'll only do this really crappy job for $30 an hour. Well, I can import someone from overseas who's usually getting paid $1 an hour and will happily do it for 10, 15, whatever it is, right? And it's the end goal of this is to essentially lower the standard of living for the entire working class and non-property owning class in Canada. You all just need to accept and be okay with barely being able to afford rent, even though 10 years ago, this wasn't normal. You need to be okay with nearly crying every time you go to the grocery store, because look at all these people we've imported who are shifting our culture to be okay with this because they are used to a lower standard. It's great to have immigration of people who want to be a part of this country, who love this country, but it has to be at a sustainable rate, a rate at which they can integrate, and a rate at which they aren't going to destroy our culture and our standards that we have for business practice, for lifestyle, at the behest of the political and corporate class.
Well, I'm sure a ton of these people, they would be happy to integrate if they were in neighborhoods where they had the ability to integrate. Because but that's not what's happening. They're, a lot of people are being shoved into areas where they're only around people that speak their native language. They're only working in places where it's people that speak their native language. They're not okay. So for example, when I moved to Japan, I lived in Japan for a while because my wife's Japanese. The whole purpose of going there was to learn her culture and language. So the first thing I did was I looked for a job that didn't have any other English speaking people. I wanted to get a job where I
That's
could,
helpful.
and it was hard. Yeah, it's hard to do, but I only spoke Japanese when I was there, and it made it really difficult, but I caught on really quick. I was able to learn a lot about the culture. I was able to learn about the language, and that was a thing. But a lot of these people are coming over, and they're just being shoved into positions where there is no cultural integration. It's just basically a remote, satellite of the place that they're from. It's incredible to see.
Yeah, I'd say there's half of them that have come here and are disappointed by that. I mean, I was doing interviews in Surrey. I haven't published them, but speaking to young women who are like, geez, like I tried to escape this culture. That's why I left my home country, and now it's all been imported here. I can't believe it. And then there's another half who are genuinely here this is an economic zone for them. They want to exploit it and get everything they can out of this country. And you can tell because they don't bother to learn the language. They deliberately move to these neighborhoods where no one is Canadian. They have come here to take as much as they can. And, that's only human. I'm not even saying this as a denigrating statement. I'm saying,
Right.
Americans and Canadians do this all the time. They move to, countries where they can get cheaper housing, where they can kind of live this lavish lifestyle, getting massages and, fruit plates every day. They're not there to really, encourage the culture that they have in that place. They're there to exploit it. And there are a lot of people coming to Canada that see it as this weak country that has given up on its identity, that has given up on any sort of standards for borders, for, socialized systems, and they're taking advantage of it like anyone would, Western or non-Western. And it's our politicians' fault.
Well, we have a prime minister. Yeah, we have a prime minister that says this is the end of it's the post-nation state, the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you struck a chord with me about like people that are leaving for higher ground, because I'm talking about moving to Texas myself.
Oh
now, like
I've been having
this
these
is
conversations too.
but this is what happens, right? So because of mass immigration, it can lead to mass emigration. It can lead to an exodus of the people that are local to that place. And I'm not saying like any particular race of people. I'm talking just people from that place. Canadians proper, like people who have lived here for, several generations, which happen to be all kinds of creeds and colors of people. But they're looking at the situation and they're going, for economic reasons and for, obviously, the housing crisis is led largely by this immigration crisis, and that's leading to more economic woes along with bad management of our. It's this brain drain that's going to happen to Canada, where we're bringing in unskilled laborers, and then we're filtering out, we're disincentivizing anybody who has skills from even staying here in the first place. Is that like, could that lead to the death of a nation? Like what's and I'd hate to think that I'm contributing to that, right?
It's like being in an abusive relationship. The people who built this country are being the worst treated here. They truly are. If you are building this country, if you are truly working, doing a job like farming, working in infrastructure, building, you are getting taxed at the highest rates. I have my Instagram. If you're Canadian and living in Vancouver, you probably get this too. I have little Instagram reel ads that are sponsored by the Canadian government pop up, and it's like free $10,000 welcome packages to new arrivals. And I just want to throw my phone across the room. I'm like, I know half a dozen people here in my neighborhood that can barely afford rent or food, that have children that would love 10 grand, and they're actually the ones paying taxes to go to these packages. It's just absolutely nuts. And I love this country. I just came here from being out with some friends, swimming in the ocean. Like, it is the most beautiful country on earth. I will not feel at home anywhere else. It kind of makes me understand the South Africans I spoke to who refused to flee their country despite the farm murders. They're like, this is my home. This feels like home to me. But I also think that anyone who is thinking practically, thinking economically, thinking about their freedoms and safety and the future of their family is seriously considering moving to America right now. It's simple as that. Every single person I know who is a very successful, industrious individual is looking at plans to escape this country. And of course, that will kill a country. If you don't have the industrious hard workers, like, and you just have the people that, you know, like you said, are this unskilled labor who don't even remember what this country is because they weren't born here. They don't know what made Canada Canada. How can they sustain it?
Well, and there's no requirement for them to know what Canada's all about. I know, like, some countries require if you want to come, you got to learn about the place at least along the way. And there seems to be no requirements of any of that here in Canada. But where do we go from here? Like, so we have this student crisis. We have all of these students that have come to Prince Edward Island in particular, which was the subject of your video, a large portion of the subject of your video, which isn't, the link is in the description down below. Please go watch it. The reason why I had you and Harrison on is because it was such a fantastic video, and it did really give a good portrayal of both sides of it, like who these immigrants are, how they're being mistreated, as well as how it's detrimental to Canada in the first place. But so these people are going to Prince Edward Island because apparently or evidently the requirements are a little bit more lax there for immigrants, so they end up there. And now a bunch of them their visas are about to expire, but they've been promised by third parties, not even our government, that they'll be able to stay. And now they have grievances, and they're taking it out to the streets to say we got duped, so therefore you guys need to deal with us. Like, where do you go from there? What do we like? How do you realistically deal with these people in both a humanitarian sort of way, but also in a realistic you can't stay way?
I mean, I know it's so absurd. The whole, like, I feel bad, but at the same time, like, it's not Canadians' problem. I'm sorry. We are caught at the intersection of an Indian on Indian violence scam campaign going on here. There are these, Harrison, I'm sure, explained it, and he explains it in the video we did, these contractors going around India telling people, you give us $10,000 and we'll get you a pathway to citizenship in Canada. And once again, what a tragic thing. Like, PEI, very small community, very small group of people. All of this is so in opposition to nature and how communities and families and these structures work. Very important when you have tight-knit groups of people to maintain that. And then they flood all these people who don't care at all about PEI. They're just there purely because some numbers on a screen, some government document told them they might be able to game the system better, have absolutely no intention of making it a better place, but they feel that they deserve and are entitled to citizenship through this way because of someone who once again wasn't even Canadian, promised them that if you give me 10 grand, you can have it. It's not our problem. It's not our problem. And quite frankly, there was that great video of Bernier the other day interviewing some of these protesters. And he just said, you have to go home. You have to go home. I'm sorry. Like, I know it sucks, but there are a lot of people in Canada right now that are in really shitty, excuse my language, situations. Their lives suck right now too because of the perpetuation of these scams. They can't feed their family. They're getting addicted to drugs because their lives have fallen apart. They are financially just destitute. Their children can't find summer jobs and get their lives together. They're sitting at home vaping and playing video games all day and have no motivation because they don't think they'll ever own a home or be able to get married or have a life, or they'll even be in Canada in the future. Like, for all of there's this pathological altruism where it's like, oh, well, this one person might be really upset if we don't give him a pass and let him stay in the country because some scam artist told him he could. Well, what about let's do some, second order thinking here. What about all of the consequences of this perpetual pathological altruism? All of the lives destroyed, the families destroyed, the futures destroyed, the nation destroyed. I'm sorry, but they have to go home.
Yeah, you can't just sit on this and hope that the problem will go away while you're obviously bringing more and more people in. So at the same time as these people are sitting in limbo, wanting to change their status or extend their status when there's been a clear decision made on where they're at, they're simultaneously bringing in another 300,000 students this year from again the same regions. And like where do we finally go? Hey, let's put the brakes on this.
I think this upcoming election, it's going to become a massive, massive issue. I did a video, I think you shared it as well. It was just saying my hometown has been destroyed. And we went into one of these visa centers, which, by the way, if you go to a little town in Toronto or like, you know, kind of the Indian areas of Surrey and Vancouver, these immigration offices, which are janky places, like really, you know, they're in the back alley, some rando running them, every corner, 2-minute walk from each other. You look at them, there's more of these immigration places than there are Starbucks and McDonald's on any street. And you walk into them and they tell you, yeah, we can get you into the country no matter what. But interestingly enough, this guy we spoke to in one of them told us they are all feeling this ominous thing in the back of their head that it's coming to an end. This election, it has gotten so bad. It is so overwhelming. Even I follow like local pages like Vancouver Wilding. It's not a political page. It's not a right-wing page, nothing like that. And they're posting videos that people are taking on TikTok of Canada Day in Vancouver Harbor where everyone's Indian and people are shocked by it. You know, this is something I used to do 5-10 years ago where I'd take videos in like the streets of Paris and be like, wow, guys, like this is some pretty quick demographic change. Not even about the demographics, but just like this is some insane amount of immigration. Are you guys sure you can handle this? And people called me a racist. They couldn't believe I did this. And now you've got normal, non-political pages sharing this stuff because it has so overwhelmed people's hometowns. It's impossible to ignore. So I do think it is going to become a major issue this upcoming election. I think the Conservatives are going to take this election, but I also don't know if they're going to be able to turn it around. This is who's even making these policies? I mean, under Harper, there was pretty strong immigration as well. Obviously nothing compared to Trudeau, but did anyone vote for this? I don't think a single liberal I know in real life actually said, I think this is a great thing and I want this. This is like a shadow, you know, behind the scenes boards and people that are not making decisions in the public eye. You know, Trudeau takes a lot of the flack, but I think he's just kind of an actor. You know, he's the drama teacher that they put up there to smile and sell out his country, which is obviously terrible. But there's a bunch of nameless, faceless individuals making these decisions to bring in these numbers. Most of them probably bought out by big corporations like Tim Hortons, like corporations in this country that need cheap labor, and also by people who have lots of investment in keeping that housing bubble going. Because if the housing bubble collapses in Canada, the amount of money our politicians and corporate class will lose that have massive property investments, not good. And they are going to keep pumping up those numbers to keep that housing bubble going and that cheap labor going, no matter what. I don't even think the Liberals that voted for Trudeau had any idea that this is what they were voting for. This was not elected. This was not voted on.
So what you're describing kind of reminds me of a Douglas Adams Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The villains in that story are an interesting. I'm going to sound like a total dork by saying this, but the villains in the story, they weren't actually bad guys per se. They were just they evolved to be bureaucrats, which is hilarious because on their home planet, there was like an animal that would smack you in the nose if you ever had a free thought. So they never had any free thought through their whole evolution. Yes. So they became a bureaucratic race. And then they became the villains and they were plowing Earth because it happened to be in the way of an intergalactic
all this
freeway or whatever it was. It all checks out. So it's this monster of bureaucracy and people all serving themselves self-interestedly along the way a little bit, right? Oh, I'm just going to skim off the top here. I'm going to give this contract to my friend. I'm going to award this contract to my buddy. And then when you see that as the government gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it becomes this giant monster. And then it moves on its own. It's like you're describing the pretty boy with the flashy show. He's not even running the gig, and nobody's running the gig. It's just it's the blob, and it's moving forward and it's doing its thing.
Totally. And I think there's also a general mindset in Canadians. I mean, I started to feel it when I was younger too. That decline of empire mindset. It's like, ooh, we're not really on the upswing. Like, I feel like we're kind of being cannibalized. I feel like people are just kind of getting their last thing they can from what Canada is, ripping out their last scam. Whether, look at the, do we even know where the money went for the ArriveCan app? That's like
we're still working on it.
That's like bank robbery tier. Like, we're going to plan a heist.
It was
But they don't
awful.
care because it's a declining empire. Who's going to look into it? There's so much scamming going on. There's so much money being stolen in the back end by these politicians. So many BS organizations being started for the sole purpose of lining their pocketbooks, right? That I think these people in these positions just look at it and go, well, everyone else is doing it. This country is dead. I might as well get a bite out of the carcass too. It's not even like
that's
a
so
malicious.
sad.
It's just self-interested. And also we're a nation that is not particularly religious, right? We're individualists. We are, even liberalism itself, while I love freedom and these kind of things, it's not a moral system. It's not a system that tells you what is like right and wrong spiritually to do to other people. And a lot of it is individualist. Well, everyone else is doing it. That's how you play the game. I got to play the game. That's how I was raised in this country to be.
It feels like the collapse of the Soviet Union, actually, how you describe it there. That's really sad. But on an upswing,
you're living in it, right? You don't see it when you're living in it. Look at COVID. Like, looking back on that, that's insane. I'm sure if we're saying in 20 years or 50 years, there'll be textbooks about the things our government did to us, but you can't see it when you're living in it until it's like you're literally at the firing wall.
well, let's hope they don't win, because they'll write the history books and they won't write that in. So hopefully we bring liberty back, and that's what I'm all about. I'm all about showing Canada as the example of what not to do, and hopefully we can move forward and bring liberty, and bring a place. There's no welfare state. There's no thing for people, no incentive for people to come in and pick away at it. Come work hard, earn stuff. Like I said, immigration's a great thing. If you have people with skills that are coming over because they want to build things, great. Come on over, join us, help us build. That's the way to go.
And I will add a positive point to this is, even though I do think the Conservatives are going to win this next election, I think people overall are getting less and less faith in their politicians and more looking to themselves. Okay, I can't trust the system to save me. I can't trust the system to save my community. And they're starting to give up on politics a bit. And I don't think that's entirely a bad thing, because I think that's when you start to rebuild what the actual foundation of a country is, which is families, which is friendships and communities. You look to each other instead. We can't trust the government. All they do is steal our money and destroy this country. We better start getting our personal lives in order, because there's no safety net anymore. And that's when you start to build a real country from the ground up again.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. And okay, before I let you go, I gotta ask you, when it comes to Pierre Poilievre, he's not talking about immigration. He's kind of avoiding it. If he's asked it, he will answer questions about it, but he's always very short and to the point, and then moves on. I tend to think that he's just trying to avoid, being painted as a Donald Trump. If he says we can't have this much immigration, blah blah blah, they're gonna be like, he's calling for a border wall. That's how I think the media is gonna try to portray it, and he's trying to dodge it. What's your 2 cents on that whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, my hopium side, that's just overdose on hopium here, is that it is a political strategy, knowing full well that this is a topic that is radioactive. And it's not just radioactive because of the liberal leftist position of you're racist if you say this. It's radioactive because there are a lot of big industry people that are donating to elections, swaying elections, own the media, that are highly invested in mass immigration. And it's to a degree that me and you, even despite all the time we spend in politics, could never even understand. And he's probably sitting there with his party thinking about how they're going to approach these issues. Like, if we open that Pandora's box, every single mega donor, every single, person that's pushing stuff behind the scenes, we're going to have to fight against them. And we're already fighting against the mainstream media. We're already fighting against a party that is in power at the moment. We're not even in power yet. That's my hopium side. The other side is that it's just, same old, same old. You cycle through parties, left, right, left, right, left, right, as the country gets worse. Maybe that's the more likely side. And at least we'll get the Conservatives in and show that the majority of Canadians didn't agree with the decline of our country. But either way, the only thing we can look to is us, our community now. This community you've created here, to find sanity and find hope and a path forward. We can't look at Pierre Poilievre and expect that he's going to fix this country, because he's one man that can change a few policies, but it's going to be up to us on the ground here.
Yeah, we'll all die waiting if we're waiting for a savior. So we all have to, pick ourselves up and start doing things. Do something.
Should it be that way? No, but it is. So
it is that way. It is that way. Lauren, where can people find you? You've moved around, so let people know where they can find you, so they can pay attention to more of your media.
Thank you. You can find me at Lauren_Southern on Twitter, Lauren Southern on YouTube, and Lauren Southern at Tenet Media. That's Tenet. Yes, Tenet. That's how you spell it. Whoa,
Tenet.
We're getting late now. Time for a nap.
So I have the link in the description down below for the video that I was referring to, and that was published by Tenet Media. Mm-hmm. So everyone go check that out. Lauren Southern's always available on X if you wanna tweet at her. Are we calling it tweeting still? Is it Xing? Are you posting on X? That doesn't go well.
It doesn't sound good. So yeah. Yes.
Yeah, we're still tweeting, Elon. We're still tweeting.
X at me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave.
Yeah, we're still tweeting. So anyway, reach out to Lauren and say hello and tell her how great good job she's doing. And thank you so much for joining me on the show. We'll definitely have you again. And keep up the great work.
Thanks, Clyde. Appreciate you.
What a privilege. What a pleasure to have Lauren on the show. What a pleasure to have Harrison Faulkner on the show as well just before that. You guys are amazing, being patient while I'm not, going through the chat here. Well, it is what it is. It's kind of difficult while you have guests on. I'm going to get to some of these super chats, though, that I've accumulated while we were chatting. Hoping that I don't miss any. Make sure that I get all of these. Got Penny D with a happy birthday, Clyde. Who takes you seriously? LOL. Who does take me seriously? Let's get the chat in here. The live chat as is going. Who does take me seriously? I think this is to the comment where I said I grow a beard and I wear glasses because it's the only way people will take me seriously. Maybe they don't anyway. Mr. Speaker, member for 23 months. Been a minute. Awesome stream tonight. Big love for the Fringe fam. Well, thank you so much for joining, Mr. Speaker. I can't hear those two words without saying it with such a weird way of saying it. Anyway, Waniska with the $10 super chat. Happy birthday, Clyde. Have a good year. I will have a good year. It's going to be a trials and tribulations, turbulent year all over the place. That's something that's going to be happening, but I am going to enjoy it. And thank you for the well wishes on that one. Ableman8 with a $20 super chat. Thank you so much. We're in the same situation, coincidence, but my wife is also Japanese. I love Canada, my home, but I'm seriously thinking if things don't change, I'm going to Japan. That was an option for us. That was one of the things that we considered. And in fact, because of visas and all this stuff, we may end up having to get separated for a little bit. I may have to move to Texas by myself, and then the family move to Japan for unfortunate interim period of time. So hopefully that doesn't last very long. I love my family dearly and would want to reunite with them if that were to occur. But you guys will be filled in. We'll let you know about all the details, because I mean, we got to talk about this. Because so many people are going to be curious about how the move goes, and because there's a lot of people considering this for themselves. So I want to share this without too many intimate details, obviously. And my wife does not like being on camera, so that's not going to happen. But I'll share with you guys how this all goes. SK, the $6.99 super chat. Ask Lauren if the rumors about her and Destiny are true. I didn't know there was rumors about her and Destiny, and I'm sorry I didn't get to this before she left the show. So very sorry that came up. I don't know if that's a salacious comment to be asking her anyway. So I'm gonna guess that it's untrue. That's my guess. If there's rumors about, and I know who Destiny is, so I'm just gonna say probably not. Don't believe everything you hear on the internet, kind of thing. RX $2. Lauren's my homegirl, or maybe spirit animal. Lauren's great. She's fantastic, and you know what? I've been paying attention to what she's been doing for many years, all the way back to when she was doing coverage for Rebel. Sorry, why am I tripping over my words here? She's been doing a bang up job, and I hope the best for her in the future. And we'll have her back on the show many times. Maybe I'll go on her show sometime. I don't know. We'll see. Trish Prue for $5. Thank you so much, Trish. I watched a video earlier. Top countries people regret emigrating to, and Canada was number 6 on the list. Housing and cost of living were the top 2 reasons. Yep. People are bailing. And I mean, if you looked at it, like, why are doctors leaving? Well, yeah, doctors are leaving because of new taxes that they're bringing on for doctors, and that's really terrible. G Meister with a $5 super chat says, don't forget Trudeau saying Canada has no culture. That's expletive. Yeah, he said Canada has no culture, and he says Canada is going to become the first post-nation state. Not if any of us have anything to do about that. Yeah, no, not going to work. Not going to work out. Absolutely not going to work out. Steve's Hyde with a $5 super chat says, as bad as things are, we're not the UK, at least not yet, I think. I have hope for them too. Well, the UK, we just saw, they just got another WEF guy. They voted in the left-leaning party, the what do they call them? Labour Party. They always have like really innocuous names for these parties, like, oh yeah, we're the party of Labour. What kind of labor? Obviously not the labor that average person does, because the guy was talking about, he was talking about how he likes the WEF better than he does his own country. It was really something else there. Newbie 431, member for 23 months. That's crazy. Newbie. Awesome. Pay cut and more taxes for me to practice up there. Sign me up, LOL. Yeah, so newbie of course is from America. And why would Americans come here? There's no reason for it. And of course, with those kinds of skills, you could just move. For most people, it's only a few miles to the south, and you'd be doing yourself a favor. Unfortunately, that's the case. And I'm not sugarcoating it. It's just the way things are. I was gonna find that clip. Here's that clip. I got to show you this, guys, because this is just nuts. That this is the guy who just got voted in as Prime Minister of England.
Let us just ask you quickly. You have to choose now between Davos or Westminster.
Davos.
Why?
Because Westminster is too constrained, and it's closed.
Okay, before he continues, he chose Davos because Westminster is too constrained. The whole idea of representative government is that you're representing the people. You don't represent yourself. You're not supposed to come in and be a ruler and not be constrained. You're constrained. That's the point. That's the point. In fact, a constitutional republic, they set it up even more restraint. The whole idea was to restrain these people because they understood that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So yeah, they didn't want people coming in and not having any restraints. So yeah, Davos doesn't have restraints, and this is an argument for why it shouldn't exist. It shouldn't be there.
And it's closed, and we're not having meaning. Once you get out of Westminster, whether it's Davos or anywhere else, you actually engage with people that you can see working with in the future. Westminster is just a tribal shouting place.
It's just a tribal shouting place. I want to go somewhere where I don't have any association with the people I'm supposed to be representing. I want to go to the place where I can talk to all the lobbyists and they're all right there, and all the special interests and all of that, so we can subjugate the people together. That's what we want to do. Yeah, not a fan of this guy. Already not a fan of this guy. Absolutely. Looking to reform. Yeah, I'm familiar, actually. Well, not a ton, but that's I'm gonna get names wrong. But yes, I think they're gonna grow. The Reform Party is gonna grow. Yeah, the Tories, disappointing. Absolutely disappointing, to say the least. People thought it was going to go one way. Well, they punished the Tories and they voted in the crazy left. They've got themselves a Trudeau now. Great. Good job, England. We'll see how long that lasts. Off to a great start. Yeah, exactly. England doesn't get its own parliament. Doesn't get its own parliament? Is that the whole statement? Yeah, it doesn't get its own parliament. It has its own parliament, but I mean, it's ruled over by essentially the WEF at this point. But hey, guys, I want to thank you, ladies and gents. Thank you so much for joining me today. Steve's Hyde with a last-minute super chat. Thank you so much for the $5. I know Labor sucks, but the Reform Party can now cause a ruckus in Parliament. Okay, so that's a plus. That's the silver lining with that whole thing. Okay, that's good. That's good. The whole Davos buddy, Klaus Schwab's little junior beefcake over there. Yeah, I don't know. Not so keen on that guy. But nonetheless, here we are. Here we are. I want to thank you guys. Thank you so much for all the birthday wishes and all of that, and hanging out in the stream and more last-minute super chats. Thank you so much for all the birthday wishes. It's great. Here's another one from Eat Me for $20. Happy birthday, Clyde. Public apology for the sensitive topic. Family is number one. If they can't follow you to Texas, you shouldn't go. That's not the scenario. The scenario that's happening here is we have to leave this town. We can't afford to live here. So we're at an impasse. We're at a point where it's like, holy cow, we literally can't afford to stay in this town. And if we go somewhere else, if we go to another town, I have to quit my job and go to another town and get another job. And so there's all this stuff going on. There's a bunch of things all in the work at the same time. So the idea is we know where we want to go in the future. We know where we want to head to, a town just outside of Austin. And I'm already looking at lining up a job and all of that stuff there. But because of our immigration predicament, there may be a time where we can't we can't go, like, my family won't be able to join me because the immigration paperwork won't be finished. And because we can't live here, it's going to be one of those weird things where my wife might have to go to Japan, and then I might have to go set up a new life, and then there might be months there. So I understand the whole idea. Family is number one, but this is family. This is the idea of setting up for my family so that they don't have to go through all of that themselves. Yeah, it's really a difficult scenario. It's hard when you get booted from your house, very, very short notice, and then you find a temporary place, but it is very temporary. So yeah, I hope I explained that well enough in that way. Canada is expensive. Leave ASAP if you can, Clyde. So this is the thing. The longer we stay, the more I'm eating into our savings, and then it makes it more difficult for us to move afterwards. So we have to jump at some opportunities, and it may lead to some tough times. We all go through some tough times. You have to make sacrifices for things to work out for yourself in the future. That is a thing. Mr. Roscoe Pico, member for 20 months. Have a great weekend. Happy birthday. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I really do. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Roscoe Pico, you've been around for quite a bit. What does it say there? 20 months? That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's not a game. It's not a joke. Very twisted and sick game. I have to trust that you will figure it out. What a joke this country has become. Yeah, it's really... it's really tough. It's really tough. Clyde, fly your family to Mexico and have them walk in. They have to swim. It's Rio Grande. The Rio Grande. But that's it. Anyway, I want to thank you guys all for coming out, hanging out, and joining me in this live stream. We'll try to get things back to regularly scheduled programming Monday morning. Hopefully you guys can all join me for that, and we'll see you all then. Exciting. Tune in next week. I haven't confirmed my guest for next week, but it's going to be a good one nonetheless. I hope I get a confirmation with that. And then the following week, I think I'm going to have possibly Tamara and Chris. So tune in. I think you guys are going to enjoy what's coming. We got lots of stuff down the pipe. Anyway, I'm going to go have some more birthday wobbly pops. I hope you guys all enjoy your evening. Penny D with the last minute super chat. Do you know how Marty's thumb is? Marty's thumb is good. It's a little raw. He says it's like he hit it with the belt sander. It's gonna be fine. He's good. You got the right goodies, and it's good. Actually, watch the last episode. We talked about it. I think briefly. I think we did, and the one that was published Thursday morning. Check that out. I think he talks about it there, and we talk about a lot of other awesome stuff. Anyway. We'll see you guys all very soon. Have a great night. Keep